Okay, I see you started it. Great. Okay, so let's look at this first example that says x to the third minus 3x squared minus 4x plus 12. And we want to factor, these are both factoring problems. We're really going to be concentrating on factoring for the next couple of sessions. So this is a four-termed expression. The only type of factoring we can do is something that's more than just a trinomial, is either find a common factor that goes into every single term of the expression, or do what we call grouping, split it into two pieces. But I always look to see if I have a common factor first. Well, there's this obviously has an x term, this has an x term, this has an x term, but the last one doesn't have any x term. So there is obviously no common factor except, of course, one. Now, usually we don't put down the one. So we try to do this by grouping. We split it in half and just look at the first terms. So between the x cubed and the 3x squared, there's no number that goes into both of them because this is a 1 and this is a 3. Of course, it's a 1. But between the x third and the x squared, they both have x's. The lower exponent is x squared. So there's a common factor of x squared in that first grouping. So I divide the x squared into the x cubed. Remember, I subtract the exponents. 3 minus 2 is 1. So that gives me x to the 1, which is just plain x. And then I do the x squared into the negative 3x squared. Those x squareds cancel out. Remember, whenever you do the subtract the exponents and you get 0, it means there's no x left. So all you're left with is the negative 3 in that first grouping. Now I go to that second grouping. And I look, is there any common factor in the second grouping? So between the 4 and the 12, obviously 4 is a common factor. If there is no common factor, when I'm doing this grouping method, I have to at least put down a 1 because I always need one number in front of the first group and one thing in front of the second group. If there's no other common factor, then put in a 1. Also remember, when that second group starts with a negative, include the negative as part of your common factor. So my common factor in the second grouping is going to be the negative 4. And negative 4 into negative 4x, the negative 4's cancel out. I'm just left with the x. And negative 4 into positive 12 gives you negative 3. You'll know you're on the right track when the two parentheses look identical. Then what you can do is just take that common binomial factor, which is the x minus 3, put it in front, and in your second parentheses, put the two things that are on the outside. So one thing is the x squared, and one thing is the negative 4. Before you can say that you are totally finished, you have to look. Can you simplify either of the parentheses? So the first parentheses is x minus 3. That's as simple as you can get. There's nothing you can do to factor it further. But in the second parentheses, you have an x squared minus 4, which we know is the difference of squares. This is an x times an x. This is a 2 times 2. So that means that we could even go further with that. We leave the x minus 3 alone, and we break up the x squared minus 4 into its two binomial conjugates. We take the x squared and break it up into x and x. The 4 we break up into 2 and 2. And in one parenthesis, we put a minus, and one we put a one we put a plus, and one we put a minus. These are what are called conjugate binomials because they really look identical, except one has a positive sign and one has a negative sign. And that would be what's called complete factorization. When we're trying to factor something, we want to go as far as we can. If this had been an x squared plus 4, I wouldn't have been able to go any further, because the only thing I can do with binomials is if it's the difference of squares, if there's a minus. Any question about that?
Professor, can you please let Jennifer in? She's been waiting.
Oh, then
There's nobody in the waiting room.
uh, Melissa is taking care of the waiting room, and everybody's coming on.
Everyone's in. I don't see any waiting person in the waiting room.
Oh, she's in. Jennifer, she's in. I see her.
I don't know.
I'm here. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay, great. All right, let's look at this second example, 4x squared minus 81. Again, I do what I did before. Whenever I go to factor, I want to look for a common factor first. So first I look at the numbers. The 4 and the 81, there's nothing they could divide into. And this one has the x's, but this has no x's, so there's no common factor of x. So this has no common factor at all. But the first term is a perfect square. It's 2x times 2x. The second term is a perfect square. It's 9 times 9. And there's a minus in between them. So I can do the same thing I did with this one. The difference of squares can be factored into the conjugate binomials 2x plus 9 and 2x minus 9. And it doesn't matter if you put the minus first and the plus second, it doesn't matter what order you put it, but in one you have to have a plus and in one you have to have a minus. Is that clear? I see some chats. I see, Stacia, you certainly did the right answer for the next. Okay. So this pretty much takes us to where we had left off on Tuesday. And before I go any further, let me just reiterate. There are still several people who have not done quiz 2. If you please let me know if what your problem is as to why you're not doing it. I have extended it so you can do it through into next week. I think I gave you through the 14th. I'm not sure exactly if it's the 14th or the 15th of, so you have over the weekend to complete it. Please make sure you do that. There is also, starting right after class today, I will open up the test, the first test that we're having on Blackboard, which consists of 15 questions. I'm giving you an hour's time. I'm going to be spending at the end of the period, I'll do some examples. Since it's from the very beginning of the term, I'm going to spend a little bit of time reviewing some of the different types of questions. You also have until the middle of next week, I think I gave you until Tuesday, to complete that test. Again, both of them are timed tests. Notice if it's on Blackboard, it's considered a test. If it's on Delta Math, it's a quiz. The Delta Math quizzes are on just one topic, but the test is on 3 topics. The first thing that we did, please mute yourself. I have to unmute myself. Okay. I don't know why. I don't know why there's a problem getting in. As I said, it's much simpler without the waiting room, but until we see
Professor,
that it's not necessary, we're just gonna have to get along with it.
Professor,
Yes,
I have a question. It's Jennifer. Good morning.
yeah, hi,
In the test that we're gonna have, that it's gonna be posted on Blackboard.
yes.
Are those written problems where we have to figure out the X and the Y? Is that gonna be part of the test? Because I'm having issues with that. That's the only thing that I'm having.
You mean the word problems?
Yeah.
Okay, there is going to be one of that sort, and I'm gonna go over one or two of them of the type that you really have to know.
Okay.
Because the ones that are on Delta Math are quite difficult.
Oh God.
And I'm gonna go over the kind that you have to know, okay?
All right.
I
Thank you.
am going to be reviewing for this Blackboard test. In terms of the midterm, I've been informed that the week of the 20th of March is the week that I have to give the midterm. In other words, not next week, but the following week. And we'll talk about when will be a good day to give it, etc. But I'll let you know about that either tomorrow or on Tuesday. But it will not be, it'll probably be either Thursday or Friday, the 20, what is it, the 25th and the 26th. It'll be one of those days. And I will be giving you, aside from the tests that you're going to be having on Blackboard now, I'll probably give you a practice midterm as well. I really want you to feel secure when you get to those tests. Okay, so that's where we're at this point. So chapters 1, 2, and 3, the equations, inequalities, and absolute value equations, the graphing with the parallel lines and perpendicular lines, and the systems of equations. Those are what this first test on Blackboard is going to be about. And it's 15 questions, and they're all multiple choice, and you're to pick the right answer. Okay, so I want to concentrate for the rest of today on factoring of trinomials, because those are the most common type of factoring that you have to do. And we started talking about it on Tuesday, how really the way we get a trinomial is usually when we multiply two binomials and we get four terms. And if we but usually the two middle terms, the outer and the inner, are like terms, so we combine them. What I'm going to show you in terms of factoring a trinomial is I'm going to show you how to go back to get the four terms that it originally was, so that we can use this grouping method to factor it. And I'm going to try and write out all the different kinds of rules that you're going to need. And I'm going to try and make the rules as simple and as compact as possible. Keep in mind, whenever you're doing factoring, the first thing you're always going to be looking for is a common factor. That has to come first. You then look for other factoring, but common factors is always going to be your first type of factoring. So let's say I gave you something that looks like this. X squared plus 12x plus 20. The trinomial, the general look of a trinomial is ax squared plus bx plus c. A three-termed expression, usually it doesn't have to be an x, it could be a different variable, but it'll be a square term, then just a plain x term, and then just a plain number. That is what we call descending order. And every different trinomial will have different numbers for the A, the B, and the C. If I look at this trinomial, I see that there's no number in front of the x squared, so the A in this case is 1. The B, the number in front of the x is 12, and the C is 20. You can always pick out what the A, the B, and the C is. And very often the method that we're using is called the AC method. Your first step is to figure out what is A times C. So in this case, the A is 1 and the C is 20. So my AC is 20. After we figured out the AC, we do two things. We first look at its sign. Now, sometimes the sign is going to be positive, and sometimes the sign is going to be negative. In this case, the A times C was a positive sign. Here's what we do. When the sign is positive, we look at the middle. Look at the middle sign. Oh, let me just do the positive. In this case, the middle sign is also positive. In that case, it means, remember, we're breaking this up into two numbers. It's going to be broken up into two positive numbers. If the sign in the middle is negative, then we're going to break up this number into two negative numbers. So when my sign of my AC is positive, I'm either going to be looking for two positive numbers or two negative numbers. After that, so that takes care of the sign. We also have to worry about what the numbers are. So how do I figure out what the number is? I look at that AC. Okay, so let's see. Let me go over here. So this is step one, dealing with the signs. Step two, look at the AC. Look at the number, which in this case happens to be 20. And also the B, which in this case happens to be 12. What we're looking for is two numbers that multiply to the AC, which in this case is 20, and add to the B, add to the 12. Can we think of any numbers that would work? Can you think of any numbers that multiply to 20 and add to 12? And I think we can think of them as,
10 and 2.
anybody?
10 and 2.
10 and 2. So we have these two numbers, 10 and 2, that meet this criteria. And since that the middle term was positive, it's going to have to be a positive 10 and a positive 2. If this would have been a negative 12, if this would have been a negative 10 and a negative 2. So again, when my AC is positive, let me just put the positive. It means either both your signs are going to be positive or both your signs are going to be negative. you determine how to break up that middle term by finding a number that multiplies to the AC, which in this case is 20, and adds, and here's the hint, this is a plus. This was a plus 20, so it has to add to the middle number. Again, we found that to be 10 and 12, 2. And then we rewrite our trinomial, leaving the first term alone, leaving it x squared, putting a 10x here, putting an x next to this, putting an x next to this, and leaving the third term alone. I have taken this trinomial and broken it down into 4 terms. Notice, if you look at it, the 10x plus the 2x actually gives me 12x. And the reason I do this is because then I can use grouping. Remember our grouping method. This is 4 terms. In my first group, I have an x squared and a 10x. So that has a common factor of x. So I do x times x plus 10. In my second group, I have a common factor of 2. So I do plus 2 times x plus 10. I'm on my right track because the x plus 10 is the same for both parentheses. I put that x plus 10 first. And in my second parentheses, I get my x plus 2. And I have factored this x squared plus 12x plus 20 into x plus 10 and x plus 2. Again, I figure out what my AC is by multiplying the first number, if there's no number there, it's 1, times the last number, which is the C. That gave me a positive 20. Since it was positive, I knew my signs were either going to be 2 pluses or 2 minuses. And since my middle term was positive, I knew they're both going to be positive. If the middle term would have been negative, I knew both of them would have to be negative. So I knew these 2 numbers that I'm splitting the 12x into are both going to be positive. I then look for 2 numbers that multiply to this AC, which is 20, and this is plus, add to that middle term, which is 12. We found that to be the 10 and the 2. And then we broke up the 12x into the positive 10x and the 2x, and then just did our grouping method. Shall we try another one? We okay with this one?
Try another one. Yes,
So
thank you.
do it. Okay.
Yes, please, another one.
Yeah, we're doing another one. Okay. And I'll try to not make it so large now that we have the rules. I'm not going to rewrite the rules. Okay. Let's say I have x squared minus 7x plus 12. What is our AC? I'm going to write the AC right over here. How much is A times C? Right, it's 12, because this is a 1 and this is a 12. And I'm writing actually the sign also because I have to be aware of the sign. This sign is positive. Now remember what we said, when that sign is positive, either the two numbers we're going to get are going to be positive or the two numbers we're going to get are negative. I look at my middle term. My middle term is negative. That means I'm going to have two negative numbers. I know when the last term is positive, that's because if you're multiplying two numbers, your answer is going to be positive. It means that either you're getting a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative. The middle term tells you what it is. So in this case, they're both going to be negative. Then I look for two numbers that multiply to 12, because that's what my AC is, and this is plus, and add to 7. What multiplies to 12 and adds to 7? Obviously, that's
4 and 3.
4 and 3. So I'm going to write my 4 here and my 3 here. Remember, I knew they were going to be minus because that middle term was minus. I have to put an X next to each of them. And just bring down the other two terms, the X squared and the 12. In other words, the whole point of this is to make sure to break up this negative 7x into two pieces that will give me the right combination. Because there are many ways of breaking up the negative 7. It could have been negative 6 and negative 1. But in order to factor it, it has to be that it has to multiply to 12 and it has to add to the 7. And it has to be negative, so they both have to be negative. And now I can finish this up by doing my grouping. This first group has a common factor of x, so this becomes x times x minus 4. This group has a common factor of 3, because this is a 3 and this is a 12, but since it starts with a negative, it has to be a negative 3. And therefore, this will give me x, again, negative 3 into positive minus 4. And now I just take my common factor of x minus 4, put it at the front, and what goes in the second parenthesis is everything that's on the outside, x minus 3. And that, I know that other people, you may have different methods of doing this. If you get these answers by doing it, I see most people have, Stacy got it right, Jonathan got it right. So
Professor,
yeah.
what confused me at first was that the positive, so it doesn't matter what sign is at the end, you have to switch it to the sign that's in the middle, right?
Yes, it's the sign of the first term. See, because here there are always going to be two terms over here. It has to be the sign of that one, the first
Okay.
one of the group.
So it has to be the sign of the middle
Also,
one.
if you had put the x minus 3 first and the x minus 4 second, that would have been perfectly okay as well.
Okay.
Okay, I want to give you two problems to try on your own before we do some more, okay? While you're doing these two problems, I'm going to take attendance. Can I erase this? Anybody still want this on the board?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay. Okay, so I'll start writing them over here. Here's my first one. I can erase it now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, then I'll do that. It's easier for me to do it over here. Okay, so let's say I gave you this one. Here's number 1, x squared plus 3x plus 2 as one question. And here's your second one, Um, x squared minus 5x plus, I'm sorry, not 5x, minus 10x I want to do, plus 25. Okay, let's see if you could factor these two trinomials while I'm taking attendance. Azia,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Good morning. Nashia, Annabelkis, Emma,
I am present.
good. Messiah, April,
Present.
good. Khadija,
I'm here, Professor.
good. Umar,
Hello.
hi.
Uh,
Yakima, Ellison, Cheryl, I know you're here. Stacia, I know you're here. Natalie,
Here.
Maldonado.
Here.
Natalie here? Good. I reset those things for you, okay? Erica
Here.
here?
Here.
Good. Jonathan,
Here.
yeah, I know you're here. Okay. Luke Minot. Luke here? Layla,
Yes, I'm here, Professor.
good. Ashley, I know you're here. Kachira, I know you're here. These are people I saw. Jennifer, I think I saw you here also.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Trying to. Rachel,
I'm here.
good. Gloria, Corey Brown, and Denisha, I saw you. And
Sorry, I'm here.
Corey, you're here. Okay.
I was having trouble unmuting.
Okay, I got you. And Devana. I'm
In
pretty-
attendance.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, so we're okay with that. So let's look at these now. Somebody want to walk me through number one?
I can try, Professor. I don't know if I'm right.
Okay. Start me off.
Okay. So we know the AC is 2.
Okay. She knows that the AC is 2 because this number, there's no number here, so it's a 1, and this is a 2, and it's a positive 2. Let's always emphasize, because we're going to have to be very careful about that sign. Okay.
So I know that my signs are going to be positives because the middle sign is a positive.
Okay, so we're going to have 2 positives.
You have to find what goes into 2, right?
It has to multiply the 2.
Okay, so
Right?
times 1,
Say it loud. You said it right.
2 times 1.
It has to be 2 times 1 because it has to multiply the 2. And since this is positive, actually, I should look at this. It has to multiply the 2. And since it's positive, it has to add the 3, which is 2 and 1. Does it make a difference where I put the 2 and where I put the 1?
No.
No. So let's put the 2 here and the 1 here. But of course, you have to put an X next to each of them. Okay. What do I do with
I
this?
brought down the 2x. I mean the x squared, sorry.
I just bring down the X squared and
The positive 2.
right. Okay. So you've got it split up. You've got
Now
your
we have
four
to split
terms.
them up, so it'll be x, open parentheses, x, 2 plus 2.
Right? Because X into 2X is just the X is going. Okay, what about your second group? What's your common factor?
X again.
No, because this
I mean, open parentheses.
yeah, but I have to put a number in front of it because when I'm doing
One.
that,
One.
when I'm using grouping, I always have to have a number in front of each of the parentheses.
You'll have to put
What?
the 1.
Right. If there's no other number, then you put a 1. If there's no common factor, you just put a 1. And then in your open parentheses, what do you get?
Oh, hold on.
Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. X
Yeah.
plus 1 plus 2.
X plus 2. So if there is no common factor, then just put a 1 in front of it because you need a number there. Okay, so what is your final answer going to be? Let's go over here. What should I put in front?
Then it's gonna be open parentheses. Oh God.
Okay, somebody wants to have a say in this.
I can help Jennifer.
Somebody has to take over.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I'll finish it up. Excuse me. Okay. Obviously, we have an X plus 2 in both parentheses, so that X plus 2 goes first. And what's outside the parentheses is an X plus 1. That's why you need to put a number in front of that for second parentheses, because you need it for what you're going to put into the second parentheses. And your final answer comes out to be X plus 2 and X plus 1, which is perfect. Okay.
Professor,
Yes.
does the order of the number matters? Because I got a different answer. You know how in the board you put x squared plus 2x plus 1x plus 2?
Yeah.
Right there, yeah. What if the 1x and 2x was switched? Does it matter or no?
No, you know what? Let me move this one down and I'll show you how it doesn't make a difference. Okay?
Okay.
What if, it's a very good question. She said, okay, she knew it had to be, this 3 had to be broken up into a 1 and 2. So she said, why couldn't we do it as x squared plus 1x plus 2x plus 2? I'm going to show you that it doesn't make a difference. You'll come out with the same exact answer. In your first group, the only common factor you have is x, correct? Because this has an x squared and this is an x. There's no number, it's just x. So I put the x on the outside, x into x squared gives me x. X into 1x leaves me 1. The x cancels out. In my second group, I have a 2x plus 2. I have a common factor of 2. No x because this term doesn't have an x. Taking the 2 out, 2 into 2x gives me x. 2 into 2 gives me 1. Instead of having x plus 2 in the parentheses, in this case, I have x plus 1 in the parentheses. But it's good because I have x plus 1 in both parentheses. So I can put that x plus 1 first. And in my second parentheses, I put the things that are on the outside, which is the x plus 2. If you notice, in the first case, I got the x plus 2 and the x plus 1. Here I got the x plus 1 and the x plus 2. It doesn't matter what order you get it in, so it's the same exact answer. So that's why it doesn't matter when you break up this 3x. You have to break it up into the two right numbers, but the order in which you put those numbers will not affect your final answer. Is that clear? Does that say?
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's go back to that other question that I had given you. Which was x squared minus 10x plus 25. Anybody want to help me with this one?
I can do it. I can try.
Okay, is that you, Jonathan?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way I do it is I see what two numbers can give me, and when I multiply it, it can give me 25, and those numbers can add
Okay.
up to negative 10.
You're doing it. You're not doing the AC method?
No. I mean, because it
You
just
know
kind of
what? At
confuses
this
me.
point, rather than confuse people with it, I know your method. I love your method. I actually, but I try to stick with one method that'll work for everything.
Oh,
So
okay.
let me do it with the AC method.
Okay, that's fine.
Again, doing the AC. The A here is 1. The C is 25. My AC is positive 25. Now, since it's positive, I know that both signs either have to be plus or both signs have to be minus. So that's when I look at the middle. And since the middle is minus, I know that when I split this up, I'm going to have two minuses. I always like to deal with the signs first, so then I don't have to deal with signs anymore. Then I look for two numbers that multiply
That's 5.
to 25. This has to multiply to this AC. And since it's positive, it has to add to the 10.
So 5 and 5.
What numbers multiply to 25 and bring down the 25? The whole point of this AC business
Professor?
Yeah, hi.
Okay.
Can you pin me? Why I'm not getting that? Full screen. I'm only getting mute and unmute. I don't know. Can you?
Professor, how do you pin yourself?
What?
How do you pin?
I don't. Maybe can you make me the
host?
I think I better come back as the host.
Hold on.
Okay, am I back as a host?
Oh, I found multiple pins. Hold on. I got your note.
No. Oh, okay. I've got me. Okay, now I'm good.
You good?
I'm okay. I don't know why I don't know what's with the internet today. I don't know why sometimes I have that problem. Not too often. Okay. So now we've broken this x squared minus 10x plus 25 into x squared minus 5x and minus 5x. That's your minus 10x plus 25. And now we can do our grouping. In my first group, I have an x as a common factor. X into x squared gives me x. X into negative 5x, those x's cancel out and just leave me the negative 5. In my second group, it's starting with a negative, so therefore I have to put a negative, and the common factor is 5. So I put negative 5 on the outside. Negative 5 into negative 5x gives me x. Negative 5 into 25 gives me negative 5. And now I see that I have in each of the parentheses a negative 5, x minus 5, so I put x minus 5 in front. And on my second parentheses, I put what's on the outside, which again is an x minus 5. So my answer came out to be x minus 5 times x minus 5. Could also have been written then as an answer as x minus 5 with a square on the outside, the binomial squared, because these two binomials are identical. In other words, this is a perfect square trinomial, because when I factor it, I got both factors to be identical. Again, this is correct, but this is probably, if you were getting a multiple choice question, it would probably give you the answer this way. How many people were able to do these type? Okay, I want to do another one like this. Great, great, Cheryl. Let's try something that looks like this. Can I erase this? Anybody need it still on the board? Okay. What if my question was this? Four x squared minus 9x plus 2. What if I was asked to factor this trinomial? Okay, now listen carefully. First of all, I look, is there a common factor? Well, there's a 4 here and a 9, so there's no common factor there. And only the first two have x's there, so there's no common factor for the whole thing. So we're going to try and use, it's a trinomial, we want to try our AC method. Now, what's different about this? What's different about this is that there is a leading coefficient. There's a number in front of the x squared. But the method we're going to use is identical. We figure out what the a squared, the AC is. This is 4 times 2. So AC is plus 8. So now, when I'm trying to break up this middle term, I go again to my signs. This is, since this AC is positive, I need both numbers to have the same sign. The middle sign being negative means both the numbers are going to have to be negative. And on top of it, they have to multiply to 8. Notice they're not multiplying to 2 anymore. They're multiplying to what the AC is. They're multiplying to 8, but they're adding to 9. Now, what two numbers do we know that multiply to 8 and add to 9? Anybody have any idea?
You could use 2
or what?
and 3.
8 and 1.
8 and 1, absolutely. Okay, you wanted me to repeat that? Did somebody say repeat it? No,
No, but I would like to repeat it.
okay. Again, and that's why I use this AC method, because you can't use your method, Jonathan, on these kind, when there's what we call leading coefficient. We multiply the A times the C. In this case, it's 4 times 2 gives me positive 8. That means, since this is positive, I know both numbers are either going to be positive or both numbers are going to be negative. Since the middle term is negative, I know they both have to be negative. Now I want to actually figure out what the numbers are. I know the signs, I now want to find out the numbers. So I look for two numbers that multiply to the 8 and add to the 9. Now I'm no longer worrying about the sign, whether it's positive or negative. I know what it's going to be. I'm just worrying about the numbers. So can I think of two numbers that when I multiply them will give me 8, and when I add them, they'll give me 9? And somebody mentioned that it should be 1 and 8. Absolutely, because 1 times 8, negative 1 times negative 8 will give me positive 8, and negative 1 plus negative 8 will give me the negative 9. These are the right numbers. Now I just have to put in the rest of the stuff. Next to each of these, I have to put an X. And then I just bring down the two other numbers. The 4x squared comes to the front. And this, remember, I'm not looking, I don't use this AC anymore. Now I bring down the 2. In other words, the only point of the AC is to figure out how to break up that middle term correctly. And now we do what we've been doing all along. We're going to group. In my first group, I have a 4x squared minus 1x. So the only common factor I see is a plain x. Because there's a 4 and 1, there's no number that's a common factor, but this is an x squared and this is an x. So I'm going to put an x on the front. X into 4x squared will give me 4x. X into negative 1x, the x's cancel out, will just leave me the negative 1. Then I go to my second group. Negative 8x plus 2. What goes into both 8 and 2 is obviously 2. And since it starts with a negative, it has to be a negative 2. Negative 2 into negative 8x is positive 4x. Negative 2 into positive 2 is negative 1. Look at, I know I'm on the right track because I have in my parentheses, both parentheses are the same. I put that in front, the 4x minus 1. And the second parenthesis becomes the x minus 2. It's exactly what we did before, remembering before the AC and the last term were the same. In this case, the AC and the last term are different, but we work with the AC. Is this clear? Are you ready to try one of these on your own?
Professor, I'm wondering how you got the x minus 2.
Hello?
Professor, can you hear me?
What?
I'm wondering how you got
Yes.
the x minus 2. I know how you got the...
You see how I got the 4x minus 1?
Yeah.
Okay, now look what's on the outside. Outside of this, there's the x.
Okay.
Outside of this one is the minus 2. The second parentheses is just the things that are on the outside.
Okay, that's right.
That's how we always do it.
Right, you're right. Thank you.
Parentheses is what the one parenthesis that's a both for both of them. And the second parentheses is whatever's on the outside.
Right, thank you.
Okay, here's the next one. Nine y squared plus 15y plus 4. I'm going to give you a few minutes to try that on your own. see if you could come up with a method of factoring that. Am I still lagging, or is I see that a bunch of people had, I know there was something with the internet. I think it's working okay now. It's okay? Okay, let's work on that second one. We have 9y squared plus 15y plus 4. What should my first step be? Anybody?
You gotta do the AC.
Right. And what is the AC equal to?
36?
36.
Positive 36. Okay.
And
So
then
now, and the middle term is positive. What's that telling me about both those numbers?
they're gonna be positive.
Right. Okay. So we're going to have two pluses here. And what should they multiply to?
36,
And what should they add up to?
15,
Can you think of any numbers that multiply to 36? And
9 and 4.
9 and 4 add up to 13.
Oh,
12 and
never
3.
mind.
12 and 3.
Any
I did
other-
Professor,
3
you
and 12.
12 and 3.
12 and 3.
I'm hearing, is that you, Corey, that I'm hearing?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did 3 and 12.
3 and 12. Right. Because 3 times 12 is 36. And 3 plus 12 is 15. Sometimes you have to play with the numbers a little bit. You can use your calculator to do this, but be very careful before you make the choice. Make sure they add up correctly. So we're gonna break this up. Does it make a difference if I put the 12 here and the 3 here or vice versa?
No.
No, which way do you want me to do it?
Just put the 12 first and the 3 after.
Okay, so this is gonna be my 12y and this is gonna be my 3y. And I just bring down the other two terms, the 9y squared and the 4. Notice I really have not changed this because if you don't want to do this, but you could have gone right back to this 12y plus 3y is the 15y.
Mhm.
Okay, so now, but we have now our 4 terms, so we can group it. In my first group, what's my common factor?
Why?
Just plain y? Anything better than any number?
3.
3, because 9 and 12 has a common factor of 3, so this will be a 3y. 3y into 9y squared is 3y. 3y into 12y, well, the 3 into the 12 is 4, and the y's cancel out.
Mhm.
What about my second group, the 3y plus 4? Do you see any common factor there?
No.
No. So what do we say when there's no common factor? What do we put?
The
We-
y.
1. Always put a 1. If you have no other common factor, and 1 is a common factor of everything. So if you can't think of any common factor, put down a 1, because in front of each of these parentheses, you must have a number. So 1 into 3y stays 3y. 1 into 4 stays 4. And now we see that in our first parentheses, we put the 3y plus 4, because that's the same in both of them. And in my second parentheses, I put, well, here's the outside one is 3y, and the outside one over here is plus 1.
Mhm.
And now and this is a hard factoring. This is much harder than the first kind because there is a number in front of the leading, it's called a leading coefficient, a number in front of the square term. Were people able to get this? I see some people said
Yeah,
that
I got
they okay, so I want to try a slightly different type of, can I erase this now? Anybody need this still on the board?
1 second.
Okay.
Okay, you can erase it.
Okay. All the cases that we were dealing with now in these trinomials had my AC being positive. Now we're going to look what happens if my AC is negative. In other words, I'm going to start with an easy one. Suppose I gave you x squared minus 2x minus 15. What if my AC, which in this case is 1 times negative 15, is negative? Now, remember, we're looking for numbers that are going to multiply to the AC. In order for it to, I'm first going to deal again with the signs, then I'll worry about the numbers. But in order for numbers to multiply to a negative, obviously one number has to be positive and one number has to be negative. When the AC was positive, they either were both positive or both negative, because that's the only way. 2 positives give you a positive and 2 negatives when you multiply give you a positive. But if your AC is negative, then it means you're multiplying a positive times a negative. On top of that, you are now looking for 2 numbers that are going to multiply to 15 But since this is negative, they have to subtract. The sign tells you what operation you're going to do. You have to subtract to get this number. What numbers multiply to 15, but when you subtract them, give you 2?
-5, the -5
Okay.
and 3.
Okay, it's 5 and 3. Let's just talk about the numbers and we'll talk about the signs. Obviously, it's 3 and 5 because 3 times 5 is 15 and 5 minus 3 is 2. But since that term is negative, the bigger number, when the middle term is negative, you have to go to the bigger number has to be the negative. So I'm going to make it a -5 and a +3. Do I have to write down these rules or have you written them down? Should I write down the rules? Let me finish it and then I'll write down the rules. Okay, so now we're going to do exactly what we did before. We split this -2x into 2 terms, a +3x and a -5x. And again, just like before, you could have put the -5 first and the +3 second. What you can't do is call this a -3x and this a +2x. The sign of the middle will tell you the sign of the larger number. Since the larger number is the 5 has to be the negative. It doesn't matter what order it is, but it has to be, the negative has to be with the larger number, which in this case is the 5. I bring down the x squared, I bring down the -15 like I did before, and again, I do my grouping. In my first group, x squared and 3x, we have a common factor of x. That gives me x times x plus 3. In my second group, I have a common factor of 5, but since it starts with a negative, I have to include the negative. My common factor is -5. -5 into -5x is x. -5 into -15 is +3. Notice, I know I'm on the right track because I have an x plus 3 in both parentheses. I put that in front. And in my second parentheses, I put the numbers that are on the outside, the x and the -5. So let's write down these rules for when the AC is negative. When the AC is negative, it means your 2 numbers are going to be opposite signs. One is going to be positive and one is going to be negative. They have to multiply to the AC and subtract to the B. The AC is this times this, the B is this. In this case, the AC was -15 and the B was -2. And always put the larger number with the middle sign. In other words, if the middle sign is positive, the larger number will be positive. If the middle sign is negative, then your larger number has to be the negative. And that's exactly what we did over here. Our AC was -15, so we looked for 2 numbers that multiply to 15. But since this was minus, they had to subtract to the middle term, which was 2. That was my 5 and 3. And since the larger number was the 5 got the negative, which meant the 3 was a positive. They have to be opposite signs. Shall we do another one like this? Can I erase this? Okay, let's try another one. I'll do another one, and then I'll give you a couple to try yourself. Let's say I had this problem. Here it is, 4x squared minus 11x minus 3. Okay, I'm going to work this with you, and then I'm going to give you a couple to try. Okay, the first thing I have to do is figure out what my AC is. And my AC is 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. It's negative, which right away tells me that one of my numbers is going to be negative and one of them is going to be positive. And it doesn't matter which I'm going to put, if I put the positive first or the negative, I just have to match them up properly. So now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 12, but when I subtract them, because this is a minus, they're going to end up being 11. Can you think of two numbers that multiply to 12 but subtract to 11?
Negative 12 and 1.
12 and 1. And since the middle term is negative, I must put the larger number with a negative and the smaller number with the positive. So 12 times, negative 12 times 1 will give me negative 12, and negative 12 plus 1 will give me negative 11. Now, of course, I put an x next to each of these and bring down the other two terms. Here's my 4x squared. Here's my 9 minus 3. Again, I could have put the 1x first and the negative 12x second. It doesn't make a difference. But now I'm going to use my grouping. In 4x squared minus 12x, I have a common factor of 4x, because 4 goes into 4 and 12, and x goes into x squared and x. 4x into 4x squared gives me x. 4x into negative 12x gives me minus 3. Then I have a 1x and a minus 3, and I have no common factor, so I know I have to put a plus 1. And plus 1 into 1x is x. 1 into x to 3 is minus 3. And I see that I have an x minus 3 in both of these, so I put that in front. And in my second parentheses, I put a 4x plus 1. So even though there's a leading coefficient in this case, the idea is the same. You multiply, you get your AC. Remember, when the AC is positive, you're looking for numbers that add to the middle. When your AC is negative, you're looking for numbers that subtract to the middle. So the sign will tell you what operation. Plus means add, minus means subtract. You ready to try a couple on your own? I'm going to erase the rules, okay? Okay, here's this one. 2x squared minus, no, what's it? No, I think we did that one already. Okay, here's one. Here's number one, x squared minus 4x minus 45, that's one. And here's the second one I'd like you to try. Here's a hard one. 10x squared minus 3x minus 18. That looks good. Okay, I think we've had, I want to get this done, so let's, here's my eraser, okay. Let's look at the first one. The first one is a little bit easier than the second one because it just starts with a plain x squared. X squared minus 4x minus 45. What is my AC?
One
What's the
times
AC
negative
in
45.
this case?
Let's start off at 1 times negative 45.
How much is it?
1
Okay, it's
times
1
negative
times negative 45, so it gives us negative. Okay, so we're looking for two numbers that we want to split this up. So we want to split it up into two numbers and multiply to 45. But when we subtract them, they're going to just give me 4. And obviously, one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative because this number is negative. What numbers did you come up with?
So I use negative 9 and positive 5.
Anybody come up with?
Negative 9 and positive 5.
Okay, it's 9 and 5 because 5, then subtract to 4. And since this is negative, we're going to put the 9 with the negative and the 5 with the positive. Very good. And we're going to put the x's next to it. And we're just going to bring down this x squared and this 45. And of course, then on this first pair of numbers, we have a common factor of x. So that becomes x times x plus 5. And in my second group, I have a common factor of 9, because it's 9 and 45, but then since it starts with a minus, I'm going to have to use the negative. Negative 9 into 9x gives me x. Negative 9 into negative 45 gives me plus 5. So my final answer comes out to be x plus 5 and x minus 9. Question?
Yeah, we weren't
Oh,
seeing you. It
can
was
you
kind
hear
of
me
frozen
now?
just now. Yeah, we could hear you the whole time, but it just wasn't showing any picture. It was black. But now I can see.
Okay, it's clear now. Is this one clear though? Does anybody have a question of that the final answer came out to be x plus 5 and x minus 9? Is that okay? Anybody want me to redo it?
Sir,
I don't know why I'm having. Kashira, you have a question?
I got x minus 5 and x plus 9.
No. You got x minus 5 and x plus 9. So here's the clue.
Is it the
The
same
middle
or
term
no?
is negative, right? That means what? No, to say x plus 5 and x minus 9 is not the same as saying x minus 9. What did you say? What did you get as your answer? Kashira?
I got x minus 5.
Did you lose me again?
You're 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 lagging like your screen.
Oh. You got x minus 5 and x plus 9. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what you got?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is the same thing? No, obviously it's not. because this has the 5 being negative and the 9 being positive, and I have the 5 being positive and the 9 being negative. So go back to your original. In your original example, the x, the middle term was negative. When the middle term is negative, I have to put the negative with the bigger number. Between the 5 and the 9, the bigger number is the 9, so I have to put the negative with the 9. Is that clear?
Okay, do we always put the negative with the bigger number? Always?
No, well, it depends. If the middle term is positive, you put the bigger number with a positive. If the middle term is negative, you put the bigger number with the negative. Did you understand what I was saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so if this would have been a plus 4x, then I would have done it by your way. But since this was a minus, I had to put the bigger number with the minus. Whatever that middle term is, that determines the sign of the bigger number. Okay, let's look at the second one. The second example was 10x squared minus 3x minus 18. And again, I had to do this AC. What did you get when you got AC? What did you get?
It was 10 times 18.
How much?
Times
10
negative
times negative 18 gave me negative
180.
180. Which means, again, since it's negative, one of the numbers has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. And they have to multiply to 180, but when I subtract them, they have to give me 3. What numbers multiply? So again, you're going to have to play with your calculators and try numbers out. Anybody come up with any numbers?
Yeah. I came up with positive 12 and
Any
negative.
numbers that multiply? Yeah.
Positive 12, negative 15.
And negative
15.
Okay, she came up 12 times 15 does give you 180, and 15 minus 12 does give you 3. So 12 and 15 are the perfect choices. And since the middle term is negative, I'm going to put the larger number, which is the 15, with a negative, which means I'll put the 12 with a positive. Again, if this would have been a plus, I would have had to pick the larger number with a plus. I put an X next to each of these, and this stays my 10x squared, and this stays my negative 18.
Frozen.
And now I'm ready to do the grouping.
Screen is frozen.
In my first group, is there a... I'm frozen? I don't know what to do about this. I'm just telling me my internet is... Are you okay now?
Yeah, a little better.
My screen is going. Is it okay now? I don't know why this is happening. Can I continue?
Yeah.
Okay. So in my first group, I have 10x squared plus 12x. My common factor, well, between 10 and 12 is 2, and there's a common factor of x. So I put 2x on the outside. 2x into 5x, 10x squared gives me 5x. 2x into 12x, so the 2 into 12 is 6, and the x's cancel out. In my second group, negative 15x minus 18.
Other way, though.
Well, obviously, What?
I was saying I
I'm
did
sorry.
mine the other way. I used the
I
10x.
see that. Yeah, it'll come out, the final answer will come out the same.
Yeah.
In my case, I see a common factor of -3. Has to be negative because this number is negative. And between 15 and 18, 3 goes into both of them. -3 into -15x is +5x. -3 into -18 is +6. So that I get as my final answer 5x plus 6 in my first parentheses, and in my second parentheses I get 2x minus 3. If you had switched these, then you would have gotten this first and this second, but it doesn't make a difference. So now we're really at the point where we can do any kind of trinomial factoring. I just want to show you one other example, and then tomorrow we'll review a lot of this, and I will also do some review for the test. I'll give you some examples to try on the test so that you can be prepared for the test. Again, the test will be available starting today, but it goes into next week. So you can do it anytime you want. Again, once you sit down to do that Blackboard test, it's like doing the quizzes on Delta Math. You're given an hour. Once, if you don't think you can sit down and do 2 problems and go away and come back and do it later, it has to be all done in one sitting. Try it so you know how to do it. What if I gave you a problem that looks like this to factor? Two x cubed minus 14x squared plus 20x. Suppose I was asked to factor this example. My first step whenever I want to factor is to look for a common factor. I really haven't been doing that over here, but I really am. That's always my first step. In any type of factoring, the first type of factoring you always want to do is common factoring. It's not always possible, but you look for it. Now, if I look at this, I have a 2, a 14, and a 20. The 2 goes into all of those terms. And then I look at the variables. There's an x third, an x squared, and an x. All of them have an x. So therefore, I have a common factor of x. The lowest exponent is the one plain x, which is x to the 1. So I have a common factor of 2x. And that's my first step. Find my common factor and divide it out. 2x into 2x cubed, the 2's cancel out. This gives me x squared. 2x into negative 14x squared. So the 2 into the negative 14 gives me negative 7. The x into the x squared leaves me x. And finally, the 2 into the 20 gives me positive 10. And the x's cancel out. So I'm left with, inside my parentheses, x squared minus 7x plus 10. I start all over. I look at this x squared minus 7x plus 10. This trinomial that's inside the parentheses, and think, can I factor that further? Can I refactor this? I'm leaving this 2x on the side. I'm going to come back to it in the end, but first I have to try and factor this trinomial. And I do my HC method. So my HC in this case is 1 times 10, which is positive 10. It's positive tells me both signs are either positive or both signs are negative. Since the middle term is negative, it must be that they're both negative. Remember, when the AC is negative, one comes out to be positive, one comes out to be negative. But when the AC is positive, either they're both positive or both negative, and you can tell by looking at your middle term, okay? And then you say, I need to multiply two numbers to 10, but this is positive, so it has to add to 7. What two numbers multiply to 10 and add to 7? I think everybody would come up with 2 and 5.
5 and 2.
Right. And it doesn't matter if I put the 5 first and the 2, it doesn't matter. And of course, I put an x next to each of them, and I bring down the x squared, and I bring down the 10. And I've got, now I can group it. In my first group, I have a common factor of x. So this gives me x times x minus 2. In my second group, I have a common factor of 5, but since it starts with a negative, I have to include that negative. So it's negative 5. Negative 5 into negative 5x is x. Negative 5 into 10 is negative 2. So that when I finish this, this gives me an x minus 2 on the outside. And the second parentheses becomes x minus 5. But don't forget, I have this 2x from before. I have to bring it down. I just put it in the front, and this is my final answer. So sometimes this is what's called complete factorization, where you look for a common factor first and then see if you can factor further. Now, I gave you homework on Delta Math. It's I don't think anything is due for tomorrow, but you have homework on Delta Math. You have, don't forget to complete the Delta Math quizzes. Don't forget, there is a test on Blackboard that you can access anytime now until next week. Again, as I said, the midterm is going to be not next week, but the following week, the week of the 20th. Anybody have any questions they want to ask me? If not, Melissa, are you taking over?
Professor, so are we gonna go over the word problems tomorrow?
Tomorrow I'm going to go through a bunch of different types of problems that you can see on that test. If you feel you want to start the test, you could do it today. I'm opening it up for you today, but really, I would say wait until after tomorrow's class where I'm going to give a review for that test.
Okay.
Including those word problems. Okay? Questions?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave then.